gang. Here's to nights that turn into mornings and friends that turn into family. Cheers!
Hello, and welcome to the Friendship IRL podcast. I'm your host, Alex Alexander. My friends, they would tell you I like to ask the hard questions. You know who I am in the group. I'm the person that's saying, okay, I'm going to ask this question, but don't feel like you have to answer it. And now I can be that friend for you too. Listen, I love that we tackle the big topics on here, but there's a special place in my heart for the episodes where we talk about the simple things when it comes to friendship and connection. And that is today's episode. Today, my guest is Zahara Williams, and I will tell you a little bit more about her in just a moment. But I asked Zahara to come on the podcast because she has this amazing, you'll hear about them in a minute, amazing group of friends. One of those groups where they really show up for her and she shows up for them, like a life-giving friendship situation. But the world keeps going. We all keep growing and changing and opportunities arise. And Zahara ended up moving away from this friend group. And despite a few hours distance, she has maintained a close and present connection with them. Listening back to this episode today, I was really reminded of how powerful intention is in our friendships. That spending some time to think about the roles that we all play in each other's lives, the ways we can show up and enjoy showing up, the capacity we have, and then using all of that to take action, small, simple action. That combination of intention and small actions is really where the power is when it comes to our connections and our friendships. But I can get on here and put together so many episodes about big topics. But at the end of the day, I think this little stuff that can easily be passed over is really some of the most significant work we can do in our connections. That this is what's going to make the difference. Now, today's guest, Zahara Williams, is an author, a therapist, a speaker. Over the course of an 18-year career, she's had the opportunity to hone skills in the area of human behavior, which would make sense for a therapist. She has gained an analytical lens on how people relate to, succeed, and experience challenges within systems, aka some of those big topics we tackle here on the podcast. Zahara is the author of the After Betrayal Workbook, which we will, of course, link in the show notes. Go check it out. Now, I don't want to keep you any longer. This is a short and sweet but powerful episode. So let's dive in. Hi, Zahara. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited that you're here.
Well, thank you for having me.
I want to talk a little bit about, you were telling me you have this group of friends, this group of women, and you've really cultivated this group that has similar values and support each other and accountability. Do you want to tell me a little bit about this group and how it came to be?
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. I've also lived in Atlanta, Georgia, Dallas, Texas, and now the Houston area. And so moving around, I know for some it's difficult to develop and let alone sustain connections despite living in different geographic locations. But I have been, I would say, fortunate enough to make connections with women that regardless of time or distance, that we're still able to make sure that we make time for each other, that we schedule time to visit, to call, to text, to do a FaceTime happy hour, travel together, et cetera, and then have very, frank and honest conversations. And of course, those were cultivated when we were in the same geographical location, but we've been able to extend that because I'm the one that's been moving around despite the changes that's happened in regards to that dynamic. So developing that friendship took, obviously awareness of the value of each other, which is very important. We could see each other and how we each play a role in the friendship dynamic, because none of us are the exact same. So yes, we have some similarities and things that bond us together in terms of ideas and what we enjoy and similar interests, but we're all different, right? So we have the person that is like one of my friends, we call her like, she is the kumbaya person. She wants everybody to get along and just happy. That is her role. And then we have the person that is, I want to make sure that we get together because girlfriend time is important. So she really is kind of the spearhead in some ways, some of those activities, and say, let's get together. We're going to be, in the zone, and we're just going to, whether it's around a fire in the fall or near a pool or a hot tub, that we're going to make sure that we make time, or a nice little brunch, right? And so we all have our role in the relationship. And I think that's also important, not just that we enjoy each other's company, but we understand the value of the roles and the connection and being able to support each other.
I swear that when Zahara and I had our discovery call, I did not tell her to talk about roles in this podcast episode. This was entirely organic. And as you can imagine, my eyes lit up. I got so excited when she brought this up. The idea of roles in friendship ends up being a major theme in this episode. So I just wanted to drop in here and say a few things to set the stage. Because if you've listened to other episodes of Friendship IRL, you've probably heard me talk about this. And I don't always use the word roles. Normally I talk about the ways we show up for our friends, but it's the same thing. It's that idea that there's probably maybe one friend you call when you want to cry it out, and another friend you call when you want to have fun or are in need of some sporadic, spontaneous plans. And knowing the difference of who those people are will make a big impact on your friendship. So I would highly suggest for all of us, myself included, because honestly, maybe I should do a refresher. Go on a walk. Spend some time just letting your mind wander over the different people in your life. And then think about the roles that they play for you. If you need a laugh, who are you picking up the phone and calling? Then there's a second part of this activity. Spend a few minutes thinking about what your role often is. Do you like the roles you're playing for friends? Because we've all been in a friendship where we've gotten trapped in a role that we either didn't want, but feel like we should show up for our friends in that way. Or maybe it was a role that we used to enjoy, but we've grown or changed or life circumstances are different. And that role just doesn't really feel right anymore. If we don't speak up about that, then we might start to resent it. And a lot of times that can cause a huge rift in our friendships, causing us to pull back, which looks like not answering phone calls anymore or responding to texts. When in reality, maybe this is a moment for some vulnerability, to be honest, that you just don't feel like you can show up in that way anymore. And then when you have thought about the ways that you want to show up, that you are the best at showing up, start voicing that to your friends. It doesn't need to be some big, intense conversation. It could be as simple as saying to a friend casually, anytime you're having a bad day and you need a laugh, just call me. It really could be that simple. But saying that repeatedly, just offering it, throwing it out there, allows the space for your friends to start to think of you for these roles that you want to fill in their life. Now, as I mentioned before, this idea of roles is a major theme in this episode, as is the theme of being intentional, which is exactly what you're doing by spending a few minutes thinking about the roles you go to people for and the roles you want to show up as. Before I give too much away, let's get back to the episode. Okay, so a couple of questions I have just to set the stage for people. When did you all live in the same geographical location? How long has it been?
So I moved from Dallas approximately just over a year ago. So about 15 months. I moved from Atlanta because these are different friend groups, right? I moved from Atlanta 11 years ago. So that takes even more intention, right? To maintain those friendships and connections.
Yeah, to keep moving. And then how many, when we're talking about this group, how many women are in it?
It is, now you want me to count. Want to say
A
Six.
rough estimate, a
Rough
range.
estimate,
I don't
5 to 6. Yeah.
know. Okay, so like a good number. And do they all live in the same location still?
Yes.
So you're the only one.
Yes.
Is that hard with them all being like together? Or do you think that just like life situation, it doesn't really matter because they're all busy anyways? Like, how does it feel being the only one that's not in the same geographic location?
It depends on the day, if I'm being very honest, right? So some days it's absolutely fine because I'm so focused on work and projects and, cultivating a life here in the area that I'm in. And then other days it's challenging, right? If you see pictures of them getting together and, like, oh yeah, I'm meeting up with such and such. We're going to have drinks or we're going to, we need to hash some things out. And I'm like, I wish I was there. So there are
Yeah.
definitely those times where you want to be physically present. I mean, I am fortunate enough to be able to go back, or at least I have been somewhat regularly every couple of months just to get my good girlfriend time in and get my high and feel good.
Prioritize that. Yeah.
And then come back and get back focused. But it can be challenging, but sometimes it can also be a lot of gratitude that those connections still exist, even though there is a shift in the dynamic.
Yeah. Do you think that your role has changed in the group? You're talking about the roles and how everybody's
Mhm.
got the roles. Like, do you think your role has changed in the group at all?
I can see it changing.
Mm,
hmm I can see it changing. I'm the reflective one. I mean, I'm a therapist by training. So sometimes I get the calls of, what do you think? Or I'm having this challenge, et cetera, or I just need to vent. So I do get those. But I do believe that because I'm not physically there and we were never big phone people, the phone was to say, let's schedule something, right?
yeah.
It's not long conversations on the phone. So I can definitely see that shifting.
I mean, the phone piece is a great like call out for people,
Mhm.
right? I like to say a lot that technology is just a tool and
Yes,
it's how we're using it.
absolutely.
And that, I don't know, technology gets a lot of like negative press.
hmm
The PR is not good for technology quite often when it
Right.
comes to connection. But like we do have this option
hmm
to lean in. And like you were saying, like previously, the phone was just for setting up the next in person. And now you've had to shift the way you use your tools.
Yeah.
Are there any other ways that you've like shifted since you've moved away to lean in technology?
Obviously, being more intentional about the calls and checking in. So it's not the, hey, what are we doing and where are we going, to now,
Mm-hmm.
how are things with you? What's happening? Those conversations that we would normally have face to face. I would say that's really the main thing for us in terms of technology. I do have another friend who's very intentional about reaching out because she has so much going on. So she always says, charge it to my head because, my mind has not been the same since I had these children. So her memory, but she does make a conscious effort to say, I want to call and check in. So I do see it going on both sides, right? That they are also intentional about checking in on me because I'm down here in a different space from what we had cultivated for 10 years when I
Yeah.
lived in the Dallas area. So it's really important and I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
Yeah. When you were talking about that, it was making me think like when people move away, it shifts up so much of
Mm-hmm.
how we're connecting. Like when I had friends and we were all together, there was a lot of texting and saying, like, oh, we're going to this place on Saturday if anybody wants to meet up. We're going to the park to hang out if anybody wants to meet up, right? And then when you're in that space where you're together, like physically together, hanging out at the park,
Yeah.
that creates the opportunity to then be like, oh, you're going to see that movie on Wednesday. You're going to that show. You're going to run that errand. And like, I'll come with you. Like, you almost make your next plan organically sometimes in the moment. And if you
Right.
don't, it's so easy to just know that the next time you get the, hey, we're going to the neighborhood spot. If you want to stop by, it'll organically happen. It requires way less, quite often,
Yes.
of the planning piece. And
hmm
when you move away, it's so much work that you're not used to and that you have to be so much more aware. And I think a lot of people will kind of hang their hat on like, oh, well, they're my closest friends. We'll just figure it out. It's like, no, 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 no. Things have changed. And until this becomes comfortable, you got to like be aware of what you're doing here.
Yeah, because you have to coordinate weekends. Like, what are you doing this weekend? It's not just a couple of hours that we're talking about, or last minute I can drive, 30 minutes. We're talking about 3.5, 4 hour drive now. So it does take a lot of intention, being mindful, having those conversations. And sometimes they'll say, well, when I'm having something next month or next week. I've had some people, one of my friends said, I know you'll be up here next weekend, but I'm having something the next week. I'm like, well, that's a lot. Okay. I'd love to be there for all of that. And if I was closer, it wouldn't even be a question, right? But now I need more advance notice. They need more advance notice. So absolutely those things that we take for granted of, oh yeah, we're going to the mall on this particular day, right? Or come over and watch the game on this day, or let's hang at the pool. It doesn't happen, in that way. So yeah, we absolutely have to be intentional about our efforts.
In navigating this transition, do you have like new recurring things? Like you take a girls trip every 6 months, or you all check in and text every Saturday morning, or like, do you have any patterned?
We have not developed that. We have
Just wondering.
Yeah, no, we have not developed that. I imagine that if we needed to, like I can think about, of course, during the pandemic, we were like really obviously more intentional, like, okay, on Fridays, we're going to check in and we're going to do a FaceTime call, things of that nature. But in this season, we haven't needed to be that specific about it. Of course, I'll keep that in mind if it ever comes up. I was on this podcast and she just asked a question. I was like, ding, ding, ding.
I just know that, and again, right there, the whole point of this podcast is like, there's no right or wrong way.
Right.
But sometimes what does naturally happen is, I guess, maybe 3 things. 1, the friendships fall apart. 2, what like you and your friends are doing, which is just staying super present with it, staying in contact, trying to stay in touch, letting each other know that you're doing this activity the weekend after you're there. Like, hey, you're invited. In my mind, that's still like kind of similar to, it's different, but it's a similar level of presence to that idea of like, hey, we're going to the neighborhood spot if you want to meet up.
Right.
And love that for you. Love that for anybody that can have that. Other people I know have really struggled with that present, being that present still when you have distance, and have had a lot of luck with kind of scheduling. So it's automatic. Like every week we check in, and that's like your reminder to say, oh, hey, next month we're having this birthday party if you want to come, to kind of like create a trigger if it's not already automatically happening, to try and prevent what I gave as option 1, which is it kind of falling apart. Because a lot of people do not keep their friendships as present as it sounds like you are after moving away. Like I think a lot of people are going to listen to this and be like, wow, you can do that, because they haven't been able to do that. Like it just hasn't worked out for them for one reason or another.
Right. And it takes, again, valuing the friendships is important. I shared briefly with you, when we did our just touch bases, that one of the things that my father told me prior to his transition was, I really love that you've been able to establish these friendships and keep them, because that's something I wish I would have did more of. Because I had friends, well, one of my friends just moved back from Vegas, but I have friends in Vegas and Michigan and Georgia, in Dallas. And so it's not confined to any one particular area. He's like, the fact that you can do that and you can schedule a trip and say, hey, we're going to Cancun, everybody, who's coming, or Puerto Rico, or we're going, who wants to go to Dubai?
My friends and I do that too. Yeah. Yeah.
It's obviously one of the more bigger trips, but like just being able to do that and people saying yes and people showing up, I think that speaks to all of our commitment to the friendship, to be present and make the time for things that are important and people that are important in our lives.
Yeah. And like you were saying, so much of it just goes back to like deciding this is a priority, deciding that this matters, just like any other area of life, putting energy and intention and resources behind maintaining the friendships that feel good.
Yeah.
What parts of these friendships, I guess, do feel good? Like what parts of it are supportive, or like what are you leaning into these friendships for?
So much. So much. Because we all have different roles, right? So everybody provides something different. If you're struggling, or if I'm struggling, be more specific, if I am struggling with something and I need to have a listening or supportive ear and get some very transparent, whether it's desired or not, feedback, I know who I can call for that. I know if I need a good hearty laugh, I have a friend who she says the most off the wall things and will have me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I so needed that today. You don't even know how much, I didn't even realize how much I needed that, right? I have a friend that I'll say, well, let's plan something. I need to get away. And then we're just in sync on that. She's like, yeah, let's go. When are we leaving? Right. And so I lean into different ones for different things. One of my friends, her children are very active. I've been in their life, their whole life. They are now 15 and 17. It's crazy. And so one's getting ready to go off to college. And so I lean into her to like keep me, informed. I want to be a part. I want to, go to the track meets and the soccer games and the things. And they're talking about coming down here to do prom shopping for the oldest. I'm like, I'm so excited about that.
Yeah.
Things like that I think help to obviously sustain the friendships, and knowing that we all play our role in our part and it doesn't feel like overlapping. And so it's beautiful in that way.
There are people who listen who prefer maybe like one close friendship or whatnot, right? Everybody's got their thing, and there's no right or wrong here.
Right.
I am like you in that I love like a plethora of roles in my life. And as I was listening to you talk about that, I was thinking, like, I've never thought about it this way, but it's almost like it kind of relieves the burden a little bit to have to generate things for yourself.
Yes.
Like when you want to be spontaneous and go on that trip, it is so much easier to get momentum when you call your friend and they're on board and they're amping you up and they're like, we're doing it. We're going. You need this. I need this. Let's book it. Right. Similarly, when you need somebody that's a little transparent and maybe you've already come to this conclusion. I say that because for better or worse, I'm the transparent friend.
Okay.
And I know that because quite often by the time someone comes to me, if they're asking me to say it like it is, like I'm going to say the thing, like you need to end that relationship. You need to leave that job. You need to do this thing. And I'm going to like hold them accountable for it. So quite often by the time they come to me, they've already kind of made that decision on their own. They've honestly probably talked to the reflective friend to process it. And then they are coming to me at the point where they're pretty sure. And for a while, I was always kind of offended by that. Not offended, but like, why are you even coming to me?
Right.
Because you've already decided. But what I've realized, the older I've gotten, is like, I am the momentum.
I like the way you put that, the momentum that they're on the
hard.
edge. They just needed that.
That's hard to, leave the relationship, move across the country, do the thing. And we're talking about this whole thing, and it's just clicking into place. I already knew that was my role, and I knew people waited to come. I'm realizing now as we're talking about this, like part of the joy of all these friendships is, could they decide to make that move across the country? Yes. Would they spin around in their head a million hours about it? Probably. Or they could decide that it's the right thing for them, tell me it's the right thing for them, and I'm going to freaking come over and I'm going to tell them we're doing it. And I'm going to tell them how excited I am about it. And I'm going to help them pack their bag. And I'm going to look up where they're moving. And I'm going to tell them how soon I'm coming to visit. And I can't wait. And I'm so excited. Right. And I'm like the jump start for the
Yeah.
thing they've already decided, because it's not about me,
Right.
but like
Yeah.
that's the role I play. And I think that in listening to you talk about all the roles, it's like that's the joy, is having all these people you can kind of outsource instead of having to like really push yourself to always get yourself going on that thing, even if that thing is fun.
Right. I often tell people, like, I don't believe that we are intended to be surrounded by billions or trillions of people to walk this world alone, or walk this journey or path alone. And of course, there will be different people on different parts of the journey, and again, serving different capacities. But I just don't believe that we're meant to be just surrounded with people.
Yeah, like why are they everywhere? Yeah, if we're not meant to tap into that somehow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I embrace that idea. I believe I live and walk that idea that the connections are purposeful and meaningful in our lives. And we just have to be open to them, right? Be willing to show up in those moments, but also be willing for other people to show up for us. Because I know sometimes that's a challenge, particularly when people get kind of caught up in their life circumstances. They're so busy being everything to everybody, but not what they need. And sometimes what they need is a circle of girlfriends that they can talk to and have transparency with and feel loved and supported by. So I'm all for connections.
If somebody was listening to this episode and their, I don't know, story or past or beliefs or whatever is that it's hard to connect with women and what we're talking about sounds impossible, is there anything you would say to that person who's maybe like having a hard time believing that they really truly can lean in and trust a group of women?
I think there are a couple of things. One, it requires getting out of what has become your comfort zone. If you say something enough, it's hard to trust women, then it's going to be hard to trust women, because now you're believing that you're looking for things wrong. And instead of saying, looking for the connections and, the similarities and how you can be supportive to each other. So one, let go of that idea. Even if you've had that problem or that challenge in the past, that was those circumstances, that was those people. That does not mean it has to be indicative of what your path will be like moving forward. So I think also not allowing a bad circumstance or even circumstances to dictate how you move forward and really limit you from having a beautiful experience with a group of friends. So I would definitely say do that. And the other thing I would say is sometimes we got to look at ourselves. Why is it so hard for me, if that is the problem, and I'm having these repetitive things happen? Why is it so hard or difficult for me to have a relationship with other women? And do the work that it needs to take you to heal and work through that and really be aware of yourself. And I think that when individuals do those things and they step outside of their comfort zone, then these days you can meet people at home. Okay, we know that you don't always have to leave the confines of your comfort to be able to meet people, but really in order to meet people, you have to put yourself out there to do so. So go to events that you like, sometimes alone even, right? It doesn't always have to be, I have to wait for somebody else to show up to go with me, because I think there's a lot of people that also miss out on things because, oh, there's nobody to go with. Well, you can meet somebody there. And you already have something in common because you both showed up to the same event. So there are a couple of things I would say for sure to that.
I love that. And I think, we talked about technology as a tool. If that's you, and you were saying like you don't have to leave the confines of your home, one, I think we would both agree we would highly encourage you to go out and do this in person.
Oh, of course, yes.
But you know what? If you're going to do it with technology, I like to remind people, like, a lot of people are forming parasocial connections online. Stop just lurking. Actually comment and connect and message people in DMs. And like, that can be a starting place too. But also please consider going out to an event, to an event and doing some stuff in person. Yeah.
Yeah, it may start with you're in a similar group with that person, and then you all start commenting, and then you make connections there. If there is an event related to said group, like sewing, I don't know, I'm just doing, or rollerblading, I like to rollerblade. So rollerblading, then you're like, oh, there's an event. I'm going by myself. I don't know people, but I've seen some familiar faces. Maybe I'll even say, hey, I'm heading to this event. Who wants to meet me there? There are definitely ways to do it if we're open.
Yeah. The other thing I was thinking about is just, you and I have cultivated these groups and relationships and roles of support over a extended period of time. So for anybody that's listening to this and is overwhelmed, we started at 0 at one point too, and we had to navigate weird, awkward conversations and assuming someone's role was this and it's not, and asking and learning, like, you're getting this 10 years down the road. And that's all to say, like, I quite often think as adults, we forget that we all met our friends somewhere at some point.
Mm-hmm.
They all started off as just people in a room that we knew nothing about. And it was really the journey of befriending them that makes them so special to us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people go in and want to just like jump past the journey. But if you do that, you lose all the richness that's there. So like you got to go on the journey.
Right. Absolutely. And I didn't meet them all at the same time, right? It wasn't like you just jump in and you meet these 5 group of amazing women and we're all just immediately close. One of them I actually no longer, but we've lived in separate states for almost 20 years. And then we just happened to live in the same state. And so it just gelled very easily. But yeah, it was, you get introduced to one, you get introduced to another one brings one of their friends in, and then you just find yourself with these group of women who you enjoy connecting with. So I would say it also doesn't happen overnight. So you talked about the journey, and it may start with one and then evolve from there.
So to close out this episode, I do want to cover one more thing, which is just like, how do you navigate this group when your own plate is very full, when like you're in a season where you don't have a lot to give? Because I think the other thing that a lot of people think about is, if I develop this group and I cultivate these friendships, like what happens when I can't show up in my role? I'm going to be a bad friend. I'm going to disappoint everyone. Have you navigated any of that with this group of friends?
Ooh. There are times when I know that I'm overwhelmed with life. Mm-hmm. And when someone has asked me to come and I'm like, oh, I just really don't feel like it. I don't have nothing. My tank is empty. I take a moment and sit back. And sometimes I'm big on honoring where you are and what you need. So I will also say, if it's an absolute no, listen, I'm going to have to catch you all next time because I'm exhausted. I'm tired, whatever the case may be. Or sometimes I'll say, okay, this is important to them. I'm willing to sacrifice, a little bit of time and energy. Maybe I won't stay for as long. I'm going to at least show up, but maybe I won't stay the entire time. And those are usually the times I end up staying longer than I anticipate. But because I'm like, oh, I got caught up and maybe this is actually what I needed, right? Sometimes it's actually, very beneficial and therapeutic for me just to be out and not in my own space and in my own mind. And so I needed that invite, whether I realized it in that moment or not. So that's also something that I consider.
I love that you touched on that so much because I get pushback from people on that all the time, that sometimes we don't need to shut ourselves away at home. No, sometimes we do. Sometimes what we need to do is, like, there's something so healing about going out and being with people, but like in a way where you really can say like, hey, I'm having a day. And then you can do what you need to do, but like have that be accepted by your friends.
Yeah.
Like I'm having a day. I'm showing up in my sweatpants, which honestly I do most of the time anyways. Like I'm having a day and like I'm kind of crying on there, or I'm having a day and I love you all, but what you planned for dinner does not sound interesting. And I'm literally just going to order takeout to your house right now. Like there's something so nourishing about being with other people and being able to do what you need,
mm-hmm.
and having that be accepted sometimes. I love that you just said that and like called that out, because sometimes that is what you need.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of being stuck at home and like in my own thoughts about it all.
Because sometimes our thoughts don't take us to happy places. So and very unbeneficial ones. So yes, a healthy distraction can be really good for us to give ourselves a break from our own thoughts. I do believe in that. So that's when I'm like, okay, push and go, support them. And then I'm like, oh, this is so good. I needed this.
You also might get there and just be like, I did not want this. And I love you all, but I'm leaving.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm gonna head out. I'm gonna go. Well, you just got here. Well, it's time for me to
This
go.
really isn't the day for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I could do it, but I can't.
Yeah, I don't have it.
Mm-hmm. So I guess having this conversation and like reflecting on your friendships, is there anything you would leave the listeners with when it comes to like your experiences in these friendships, in this group?
I would say definitely be your authentic self. Authenticity always wins to me, whatever that is for you, because people that are meant to walk this life or this journey or this season with you will appreciate and love you just for who you are. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have opportunities and spaces where we can grow and we won't be pushed to grow in these friendships, but be who you are. And the people that you are naturally drawn to, that will see you and value you, and vice versa, that you will see and value and want to pour into, will be connected to you. And don't get so caught up on the friendships that didn't work, because they didn't work for a reason. Maybe they made space for these other new and beautiful friendships to bloom, and be open to that and be appreciative of that, so you don't miss out. So that's what I would leave people with.
I love that. Focus on what's there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Zahara, thanks so much for being here today and sharing about you and your friends. And thank you to them for letting us talk about your friend group. It sounds beautiful. And I'm just really grateful that you came on here to share with everybody.
Thank you. And I can't wait to share with them. They're like, oh, you really love us. I do. So
that is actually one of my favorite parts of this podcast is I kind of forget, like, you and I are talking, right? But now there's 6 other women that are a part of this, that like are the reason you're on here. Well, talking about this group in particular, but like, it's just like so touching to me because we all, are out here like making public declarations about how much these friendships matter. And that's important too. So
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
We're just casually closing out this episode by throwing out the word authenticity, which I feel like sometimes I'm like, what does that even mean? The word authenticity just kind of gets thrown around so often nowadays. So I just want to clarify that in the context of this episode, because I think there are a lot of layers to authenticity, it is authentic to be honest and upfront about the ways that we want to show up for our people and the ways we can show up for our people, because sometimes those are different. It's also authentic to be honest and upfront with our friends about the roles we tend to go to them for, and allow them the space to also be authentic if that doesn't feel right with them. So instead of focusing on all the layers of authenticity and all the ways that you can be authentic in your friendships, this is just one small way to open yourself up more in your friendships. I want to thank Zahara for this conversation. This was such a beautiful episode. Like I said, simple episodes like this have such a soft spot in my heart because sometimes I just don't think that conversations like this are happening enough. And I think that they can have such a big impact because this is the kind of thing that you can take from this episode, spend a few minutes on that intentional reflection, and then implement into your life pretty quickly. And it shouldn't take you that long to see a noticeable impact in your relationships. And that's pretty cool. So go give it a try. And also go check out Zahara's information in the show notes. Go give her a follow, check out her book. And I will see you next week. Thank you for listening to this episode of Friendship IRL. I am so honored to have these conversations with you, but don't let the chat die here. Send me a voice message. I created a special website just to chat with you. You can find it at alex.chat. You can also find me on Instagram. My handle @itsAlexAlexander. Or go ahead and leave a review wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. Now, if you want to take this conversation a step further, send this episode to a friend. Tell them you found it interesting and use what we just talked about as a conversation starter the next time you and your friend hang out. No need for a teary goodbye. I'll be back with a new episode next week.